Give me coffee in the morning, gotta have the caffeine. Wake me up, shake me up, dip me like a lassie. One sip, two sips, and I'm feeling so alive. Coffee in the morning, it's the best way to survive. Woke up in the morning, sleepy eyes yawning. Jumped out of bed, started the day, opened the curtains. Felt the cool breeze, the sun shining on my face. But something was missing, I needed my job to chase. Give me coffee in the morning, give me coffee in the morning, gotta have the caffeine. Wake me up, shake me up, dip me like a lassie. One sip, two sips, and I'm feeling so alive. Coffee in the morning, it's the best way to survive.
Good morning, everybody. There we go. Am I on? Is this thing working? Welcome in, welcome in. Welcome in, Semi Sharp. Welcome in, Dolphin. Butterfly, welcome on in. Forrest, thank you for being here. Semi Sharp is in here early, checking in and coming in to hit that like button. Thank you for doing that. If y'all don't mind, please hit the like button. Y'all know what it does, or what they tell us it does for the YouTubes. Let me know in the chat if everything's good to go. Good to go. Yay. Yay, you hear me, you see me, all the things. We don't want to be the Hot Mess Express every damn day. Although we will never lie about what we truly are. We don't pretend over here, and we don't fake it. So how was y'all's night? Did y'all sleep well? I did. Hot, but slept well. Supposed to get some rain tomorrow. I hear tell we're supposed to get some rain tomorrow and some cool air. And I'm like, for the first time in my life, I'm here for it. Yes, thank you, Simi, for reminding everybody. Hit them flying hearts. Just don't hit the thumbs down. Well, I guess you could. We probably all have done that here and there on these streets, but either way, just welcome in, Sarah. Welcome in. All right, guys, we're going to get to a couple of quick case updates before we dive back into that long document. Boy, there's a lot of information in that document so far up to page 68. Simi, we're going to start on 69 here in just a little bit, but a lot of information in there. And I've thought about it, and I've been trying to process what we did read, and all those statements from all those people, right? So let's get into a little case updates. We have some things coming up on the docket we got to watch for. Miss Buzzard, what's that chick's name? Ashley Buzzard. She goes back to court January 21st. I really don't care about that lady, but I want to see her go to jail for what she has allegedly done to her daughter. Like, I just can't with these women killing their babies anymore. I don't even want to see the stories, because what the hell's happening? Okay, so we got Miss Buzzard for January 21st for an arraignment, and Stacy Wandra. He goes back to court for a status conference in March 2nd to be exact, and then the March 3rd through the 6th are his scheduled preliminary hearings. So we will see if they stream those hearings. They should. They were going to stream Koberger's prelim, but that got canceled. But Idaho usually lets us in to take a look. Dolphin, you need to go back and read the first 68 pages. It's worth the read, ma'am. It's worth the read. I did title this today part 2. I did make another thumbnail for yesterday's, so I can title it part 1, but I haven't changed it yet. I'll take care of that housekeeping later. and get that in order. But we did start doing this yesterday. So we got the Wanderer docket for March anyway. One more quick thing that I did want to share with you guys and show you, because I just think it's a really good thing that they're doing this. It's to the Kansas City moms who were murdered. Let's just say that. They didn't pass away. They were cold-blooded murdered. And this came across my feed last night, and I had followed that case, so I wanted to share it. Let me get it pulled up. You guys remember this case, the two moms who went out to Veronica Butler and what was Kelly was her last, or I can't even think of her first name now. That's bad. Where'd my screen go? So they went out to get the kids and ended up getting murdered instead. They were going to meet the grandmother to hand off the children.
Is marred with evil and violence is going to be permanently marked with love and honor. A section of Highway 95 where Veronica Butler and Jillian Kelly were ambushed, attacked, and murdered will soon have markers dedicating the road to their lives. Today, the last money needed to pay for those markers was raised through a GoFundMe account. Veronica's dad said there is a way to reclaim that stretch of road, not just for him, but for Veronica and Jillian too.
I want the girls to own that stretch of road, if that makes sense. And they should own it.
If there's any money left over from the GoFundMe, Clint wants to buy footstones for Veronica and Jillian with their pictures on it this Sunday after the game. We will have more from Clint's emotional interview about what these markers mean to him and his daughter's legacy.
And that's one way for them to honor them on that stretch of road, right? Yeah, Rock Chalk did. She's been boots on the ground since that story popped off. I didn't watch a lot of her coverage because I didn't even realize she was out there doing it, but that's just a case I had followed from the minute it happened all the way through, and all the documents. Just wasn't one I streamed about a lot, but I kept up with it for sure. For sure. Okay. We haven't heard any updates out of the Tip A murders, right? One thing that I was talking to somebody on X about was the video, the person of interest that was walking down the alley. If you look at the video and you really study the background, where the guy's walking, it was not the alley right behind the home. There was just no possible way. If you look at the buildings that he's passing as he's walking, because the alley right behind the house is nothing but garage doors. The person is walking, you can see there's a door, like a regular door. So I was like looking around the map, and it changes all these different images, right, from different years. Gray Hughes, of all people, honed in on the same damn thing. And he found the exact stretch where the guy was walking. And I was right. It wasn't right behind the home. There's just no way. If you look at the video of him walking and the video of what those garages look like, he's literally further down the alley. And I thought that was interesting. How far down did this person walk? Are they even a part of this at all? Or just a random person that happened to be walking down the street, right? So, but they were in their alley, but way further down from them. But we don't know how far up the person walked. Which case covering which case, Simi? This one or... Yeah, Dolphin, that grandmother is a piece of work over there. And they're sobering citizenship. A little, what do they call themselves? I can't even remember the crazy name. Wasn't heathens. Like, maybe it was. Heathens, Van Linders, I don't know. It all kind of runs together. What the hell's going on here? A bunch of freaks in the streets making our own way. Okay. One more thing we want to talk about real quick. And I'll show you guys a news clip from it because you can find a little more information, just a little more about it on her actual true crime channel. There's not going to be a lot said publicly, obviously, because it's a court procedure. So let's take a look at this and what it could possibly mean. Are we being retaliated against, or what is going on here? Now, I do know, and I'm not going to get in the middle of what's going on in this county. He said, she said, I don't like you and you and you and you. I don't know none of these people like that, right? No dog in the hunt. I will not choose a side. I don't even know what y'all are arguing about at this point. It's y'all's business. But we're going to share this. This concerns Hillbilly Crime. Elizabeth Jones is the host of Hillbilly Crime. And this attorney friend of hers has been on her show a couple times.
Sports photographer and host of Hillbilly Crimes, is suing the Jenkins Independent School District over a letter she received banning her from school property. The letter cites the reason being her multiple posts on social media of students participating in extracurricular activities which appear to be harassment and which have caused disruptions of the educational process.
We are suing on behalf of her First and 14th Amendment rights. It's about freedom of speech. She does have her true crime show. She's not done anything to constitute being banned.
The 14th Amendment states that no state shall deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. Due process meaning a person must be given a chance to defend themselves before their rights are taken away.
She was given no warning of this. She's not been entitled to any hearing. There's been no mention of how she could get this rescinded or modified. It was just a basic letter, as you can see in the pleadings as an Exhibit A. That's all she received.
Both Jones and her attorney feel the ban has more to do with her Hillbilly Crime show and not her posts about sports.
A lot of people do not like her show or her there. I mean, it's made apparent and it's just well known. I think that has to do with a lot of it.
I've not been doing anything differently recently than what I've done, for the last 5 years that we've been at Jenkins. I've always covered the sports, each one of the sports. My kids play them all: basketball, baseball, football, whenever they had the team. And one of my children is one of the top athletes at our school. And so it's been very difficult to bite my tongue and just swallow the way that I've been treated there.
New year, new tech. Start 2026.
Simi, I can agree with that statement. Now, all comments are welcome and all thoughts and opinions are welcome, right? You're not being out of the way, I don't believe, but I agree with you. I don't watch her a lot. There's just some things, but I am with her on this because she's been targeted for a long time for her social media stuff, right? And look at Bonnie Bell's social media stuff. Sometimes you got to get a little hardcore. But she hasn't done anything as far as derogatory against the school that I'm aware of. I couldn't tell you what all has been said on her show. I know things were getting a little, heated. A lot was coming out, so I kind of just backed off. I'm like, I just need the info, right? The other stuff is I don't even know what's happening. But yeah, she's been unpacking that for so long, and for the school to tell her she can't come onto the property now, why? Why? Because she's taken photos of the kids, which was what she's always done, or what was it about her that you decided to keep her off the property? I don't know. I haven't got a hold of the document to even read it. I don't even think I bothered to look for it. Maybe I did. I actually did look up a couple of documents last night, and I haven't had time to go back and review. I go in too many different directions and rabbit holes in a 10-minute period sometimes. But anyway, it is what it is. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that situation unfolds. We do know that, according to people in the area, the feds are there and they're knocking on doors and they're asking questions. So we'll have to see. She's got 2 kids in that school, Dolphin, and she's always spoke highly of the school on her live streams. I have been in there and seen and heard that. talk about got to go to the ball game, or we just got home from the ball game, the boys this or that. So she's always, and she's even talked about how well her kids have done in that school system. I've never heard her say anything out of the way about them or point a finger in their directions. I really don't know what the whole thing is behind all of that. But oh yeah, Simi, that's a given. That's all she's reported on. She's only been on the air for like a year. I know she's thrown some couple, other things in there, but her sole thing has been the case in her hometown, which you don't blame her. She's there, right? So of course it's all about her reporting on the Steins case. Old Mickey, he just opened up a big old can of worms in that town, and ain't nobody safe now. They're all running from each other and pointing fingers and hiding from each other and talking to Brian Enton and his producer and maybe the feds. All right. We'll have to wait and see how things unpack down there in the Appalachians. All right, we're going to get into our document. Simi, I have interviewed Taya here on the channel. I talk to Taya often, actually. I popped into her little bit of a live she had last night for a few minutes, but I wasn't in there long. But Taya is a friend of the show, and she has been on here. My playlists are not organized, as y'all can probably tell if you've ever looked, but she's in there, I promise. All right, let me get to my document. There wasn't anything new on old Barry's docket. I'm so over that guy. I don't even like looking at him. He's such a bad, talk about bad vibes. That dude's got it, and I don't like it. Barry, Lee, whoever you are today, we don't like you. All right, let me get down to the page we need. Oh goodness, we got another incident. Okay, we were right here. And let me get the screen up here. Like I said, guys, we did read through 1 through 68 yesterday, and you can find it from yesterday. Okay. Oh, Simi, there's going to be so much more that comes out of all that. I mean, unless it just stopped with some dirty old men in town, getting it on with some women in town, and that's just where it stopped. But it feels like it's so much more, especially when you want to throw in the ark and don't even get me started this morning. We have to hold a separate show. Waiting to see, though, because they asked the judge to recuse himself, right, in the Steins case. And I actually have the video. And we haven't had time to really review it yet because we've been doing other stuff. But I have the video where Judge Mullins and Judge Corin, whatever his name is, were seated right next to each other at a big committee meeting for a couple hours. And Mullins' wife is there. I reviewed it days ago. They don't really talk. They're just sitting there next to it. They knew each other, right? But he failed to disclose that they were on this committee together. So the defense has asked him to recuse himself because of this relationship. But mum's the word so far. We haven't heard, because they had the Steins hearing scheduled. And at the beginning of the hearing, they went into chambers and then called off the hearing because they were saying, no, Judge, you got to recuse yourself. So we're waiting on a couple of decisions to be made in that case. All right. So this is page 69 of the 126 page complaint filed by the victims of the Idaho 4 families suing WSU for negligence. So we've been going through the incidences that the college have been reporting, or people from the college have been reporting. All right. So wait a minute, get back to the top of it. In another incident, the sophomore's neighbor informed her that someone was lurking outside the window of her residence and warned her to lock the door. She later learned that Kohberger lived nearby. Kohberger's supervising... It's all jumpy this morning. Kohberger's supervising instructor at WSU was aware that the sophomore had made complaints about his behavior. Another female undergraduate student who attended a class where Kohberger was the assigned teaching assistant reported that he always seemed to be staring at her when she would look up. She also noted that Kohberger would intentionally leave the class at the same time as her and follow her to the car. Later, the student learned that Kohberger had photos of her and female classmates on the phone. Now, that was the same one we had read earlier, right? WSU employee who was assigned to work with Kohberger began receiving complaints in late August of 2022. Remembering that these complaints pretty much started right off the bat. In August 2022, from students and staff in the criminal justice program about Kohberger's inappropriate behavior. Because of these complaints, the WSU employee spent a lot of time, at least once a week, speaking about Kohberger during different disciplinary meetings. At least once a week during different disciplinary meetings. And at the same time, they were all a little preoccupied with their internal sexcapades. They're a little preoccupied to deal with this Kohberger character over here, along with his behavior around some of the criminal justice professors. The meetings focus on interactions with fellow students in and out of the classroom, along with his behavior around some of the criminal justice professors. The various complaints included outspoken discriminatory comments, which were homophobic, obvious, xenophobic, and misogynistic in nature. And other complaints included that Kohberger could stare at people and stand uncomfortably close or lean over women. Now, Ann Taylor says that staring issue is because of his autism. And they've already said in this document that, people with autism tend to want to stalk people. Damn, Ann opened up a can of worms with that little diagnosis. As a result of complaints, WSU employee brought Kohberger to her office to talk about the complaints and attempt to get him to correct his behavior, but Kohberger deflected personal responsibility. Hang on, let me stop and check chat. Do we have any new people coming into this morning like we had yesterday? We always seem to get new people when we talk about Bryan Kohberger. Hey, Gritty, welcome back in. Oh, I got your email, Miss Ma'am. I think I returned it to let you know I got it. You don't think he was aware of it, Dolphin, like he didn't know, right? We had read earlier in the other pages that the same statements too. On more than one occasion, employees would stay in a room where Kohberger was engaging with a WSU colleague out of concern that the colleague should not be left alone with Kohberger. We had read about that earlier as well. In one instance, a WSU employee told the colleague to email her with the subject heading 911 if she needed help. I think y'all got a suit on your hands. Another WSU professor was asked by WSU staff, and especially if you go back and pull their interviews after Kohberger pled guilty and see what they had to say about it, I certainly would. Another WSU professor was asked by, I'm here for it because finally, somebody going to talk about this shit besides that one dude I go listen to because he's the only one that will talk about it with me. He doesn't talk to me. I just listen to him and his wife talk about it. And I'm like, I agree. May not agree with you tomorrow on the next subject, but today I agree. Another WSU professor was asked by WSU staff to check in on other colleagues because Kohberger had been harassing her. A fellow female WSU graduate student was asked by WSU to start keeping track of Kohberger's behaviors toward her. The student had already made an informal report about Kohberger to WSU. She did not like the way WSU responded because she felt that they would not adequately protect her from retaliation. The student continued to report her experiences with Kohberger to WSU, including to the program and chair and professors and other professors reported that Kohberger's actions made her feel unsafe. Now, all of that has to be documented, or they couldn't just throw it into their 126-page complaint on a feeling or a hearsay. But I want to go back and find those police reports from WSU that if you find the suspect, don't do anything and don't talk about it over the police radios. Don't tell me that's normal. They're the fucking cops. They're supposed to talk to each other about the bad guys. That's literally their job and why they have a radio. But we need to keep this offline. Shh. Biggest killer we'll ever see in our lifetime. We got to keep it secret. And if you took it offline because that's the way you do it, then you had to suspect your boy could see what you were doing and talking about. Make it make sense, okay? Cops just don't keep shit offline just because. You can literally hear them on the scanner go to the backdoor channel, and they'll take that shit backdoor, and you ain't gonna hear none of it. But guess what? They're on the radio talking. WSU, or now maybe not the coffee shop, and we'll just get it. We'll do it there. Including to the program chair and other professors, and reported that Kohberger's actions made her feel unsafe. Another fellow female WSU graduate student made multiple complaints to WSU about Kohberger's behavior. She was directed to copy her complaints to another department. Yeah, that one was probably having their hands full, right, with that one case. But she was reluctant to do so because she had a bad experience in the past. Yeah, it was pretty off-putting when your own professors are like, red flag to that dude, but you know what? It's okay. One day he'll do a good job. As early as mid-September of 2022, WSU professors were discussing the need to do an intervention with Kohberger. That fucking word again that I hate. And that's why I'm not taking it seriously on the internet, because I cuss too much, but I don't fucking care. Because he's offended several of our female students. When asked how do y'all know what? Y'all want the truth, cold hard truth. I'm going to lay it all out there. One time I was doing some energy work about 12 years ago, like serious energy work. And I needed to open my throat chakra. I did it a little too well. The cold hard truth came pouring out and it never stopped. And it's honest to a fault, and it gets me into trouble sometimes. I'd be like, you probably shouldn't have said that out loud, because truth is hard to take. So I apologize if I ever come off too like, whoa, y'all, I'm not afraid if y'all tell me to calm down and that was a little harsh. I might need you to tell me at that time. I'm telling you, take your energy work seriously, but not too seriously. When asked how do you want to handle this, another professor responded, let's see when we have more info. How much more freaking info did they need? I would love to see all the dates of the documentation each and every time a complaint was filed. How much more information do they need? Oh, kind of like we need more information on what year that car was, because to tell if this one right here is even worth calling them about. 8 miles away. You know what Rachel said? The colleges were 8 miles away, and she'd know because she lives there. Because I'm going to trust what my girl's telling me. 8 miles away. Let's see when we have more info. Around September or October, A fellow WSU graduate teaching assistant was asked to monitor Kohberger's behavior because others at WSU wanted to track it. He's got a hall monitor. A teaching assistant was instructed to write down anything she saw and notify the staff. It was discussed that WSU could not give Kohberger a PhD and the resulting authority that could give him out of concern over his inappropriate behavior. Now, how does he tell Mother that's about to happen? Like, I'm just going to send her a thumbs up and pretend everything's good, Mommy. But, well, it might have been good if he hadn't gotten caught. They would have been like, shoo, he didn't even get caught. We are good to go. Fuck. Would they have kept that dude on, y'all? If he hadn't have got caught and got arrested, got his ass back to Pennsylvania, sold his car, got him another one, come on back down to WSU to finish out that degree, would they just disciplined him and smacked him on the wrist? Hope for the best. Let's not forget, Xana's sister is still attending college at WSU. And don't tell me this dude wasn't watching her, reliving his excitement. Also around September, okay, the student, also around September or October, the female graduate student came to a WSU professor to report that someone had broken into her apartment and stolen intimate items such as perfume and underwear. And the student was very scared. The WSU professor also believed that Kohberger was stalking people. In another incident, Kohberger got into an... Y'all remember that girl that lived near the King Road house that had the car broke into or whatever, and went there something about some underwear and all the speculation? Maybe it was Kohberger practicing and just fucking around that night. In another incident, Kohberger got into an argument with his WSU mentor and supervising instructor, for whom he also served as his teaching assistant. This argument escalated to the point of shouting and the instructor telling Kohberger to leave his office. Kohberger refused to leave the instructor's office, causing the instructor to leave his own office. The hell? Is that Snyder Dolphin? It was common for Kohberger to prevent his mentor and instructor from leaving his office, which the mentor believed was Kohberger's power tripping to exert control. How many people did this guy try to block into their offices and not, you better get out of my way or you're about to drop to the ground and you may not get back up. And I promise I'll step over. Ask that last dude. I'll step right over you and keep walking. You're not fixing to get up because I just hurt the shit out of them things. How's that for a power trip, Bubba? And he was way bigger than you. I ain't even exaggerating. Maybe the height was about the same, but he was a bigger dude. Kohberger was also known to make unwanted advances to a female employee of the WSU bookstore. A male bookstore coworker would attempt to intervene to prevent Kohberger from interacting with the female employee. They were just letting this dude run amok all over campus while everybody just had to be afraid and leery and suspicious. It's up to us to watch our backs and protect ourselves because the school's like, y'all just, he's special. We just don't know it yet. The female employee was unsettled that Kohberger knew her name, even though she did not wear a name tag and she had not told him her name. It also seemed to the female employee that Kohberger knew the hours that she worked and would make remarks about her schedule. One evening, the female employee was home alone and changing in her bedroom when someone knocked on her window. She called her husband to come home from work. The knock on the window is never good. A majority of what we've read so far, Dolphin, all took place before the murders. Most of it has. That's the problem. They're laying it out beautifully in this complaint. And if they've got documentation that backs up everything they've claimed so far, oh man, oh man. Man, oh man, oh man. So the knock at the window's never good, is it? You can't see the freaking front door. Now go back to Ava Woods talking about the person coming up her steps and attempting to open her front door, and she chalked it up to drunk guy or person. She never saw the individual, so she couldn't tell you man or a woman. But somebody came up her stairs and tried to open the apartment door. Was it just a drunk individual at the wrong place? Go look at Ava's place. It'd be kind of hard to forget that's not your house. I'm just saying. But you never know about drunk fools. Exactly, Grit. It could have been prevented. You were here yesterday for the read-through so far. On another occasion, she heard someone on her porch in the evening. Before he decided which house was the hit, he is looking for the right house. They already brought up Danny Rawling in the first 68 pages and talked about what he liked to use as his weapon of choice and what type of home he chose. And I felt vindicated. I might got you better figured out than, I don't know, Ramslin's pretty fucking good. I am so waiting on that. I want to see if what I think matches what she concludes. That's where I'm at with this dude. I accidentally went into his head one time and it was scary and I didn't like it, so I had to leave and I never went back. Her husband came home again and saw a white car leaving the area. When was that statement made? Before or after influence from the media? That's what the opposing attorney would say. Both occurrences were in September, but if that's true and he saw a white car, dude. Oh yeah, there's like 13,000 white cars or something, another like that. WSU employee whose duties include investigating and providing education, mediation, and other disciplinary focused responses to complaints or reports made by members of the student body, especially complaints that have a discriminatory nexus, stated that she never interacted with Kohberger, but admitted she had 13 reports highlighting the concerns. Remember, we read that 13 reports were filed, but the person receiving the reports never called him in for a face-to-face interview, never had an interaction with him. You think they were doing what they needed to do so Dolphin thinks they were doing what they needed to do by creating a paper trail and documenting his actions. Yeah. Well, they were creating a paper trail, all right. I just don't know if it's going to work out in their benefit at this point, after considering some of the things they've said in those first 68 pages about the people they took the concerns to and how they kind of dismissed it. And they super had their hands full with a whole other lawsuit at the same exact time. And the board contending with that kind of put Kohberger to the back burner. That's what we learned in the first 68 pages, according to this complaint. One fellow female WSU graduate student reported that the way Kohberger spoke to females in the department was unsettling. And it would be unsettling, too, if they didn't document all these damn complaints. Females in the department was unsettling to them, and that she had never met anyone that acted in such a condescending manner as Kohberger. She wondered why people in power in the WSU Criminal Justice Department did not address his behavior. We heard that earlier as well. That one girl didn't feel comfortable going to the one department because she had a bad experience. She wondered why people in power in the WSU Criminal Justice Department did not address his behavior. On November 2nd of 2022, November 2nd, WSU put Kohberger on a brief, vague, and non-specific 4-point improvement plan. November 2nd, November 13th, 4 young lives were taken. But the plan set no specific goals. What kind of improvement plan is that? And there's a copy of the, that was in the other documents. Meet weekly with supervisor at established meeting time. Keep track of weekly hours and provide a report to supervisor. Establish weekly goals with supervisor and discuss whether previous week's goals were met. Oh my God, a lot of talking and words salad to be happening up and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I did what you told me. Okay, cool. Make sure weekly goals are progressively harder to ensure progress throughout the rest of the semester. On Tuesday, November 8th, WSU conducted a remedial mandatory discrimination and harassment training for all graduate students due to Kohberger's inappropriate behavior. Man, they were cutting it close. November 8th. Yes, so Joy feels the opposite of Dolphin. They did the bear. I think we all, yeah, it doesn't feel like this is going to sit well for them, right? After all of this. So, and I'm going to go back to ignore that car if y'all see it. But hey, that's standard procedure, Salty. Is it? Because that's odd as fuck. On Tuesday, they conducted the remedial mandatory discrimination and harassment training for all graduate students due to his inappropriate behavior. So now all y'all got to come to training. See, one bad apple ruins it for the bunch. Now we're all in trouble. Kind of like that one bad true crimer. Now we're all bad. Frickin' frack bullshit. During Kohberger's attendance at the training, WSU staff observed him sitting in the back of the room with his hands behind his head and staring at the ceiling. Oh, he was pretending they were stars. I'm lying on the deck with Mother. He drifted away. The graduate students knew that the discrimination and harassment training was specifically due to his behavior. So they're all there, forced to go to a training exercise because of this dude's behavior, and he's back there just, I'm going to look at the ceiling. Yeah, I get it, Dolphin. I mean, I understand how that works, but come on. No. They should have been having these particular things with him individually. Hell, I'd be so mad at that dude if I was forced into a fucking training program because your behavior is odd and they don't want to do nothing about it. Oh my God. November 8th of 2022, discrimination and harassment training embarrassed Kohberger in front of his entire cohort, something that the WAVR 21, there we go with that big old fancy thing, specifically advised against and warned that in a campus setting. Problematic individuals are most likely to become violent in the days following a shameful rejection. See, they talked about that earlier and laid out that timeline. Y'all triggered him on the 8th. Y'all embarrassed his ass. And y'all's little document here, your WAVR 21 that we learned about yesterday, specifically advised against and warned that in in-campus setting, problematic individuals are most likely to become violent in the days following a shameful rejection. 8th, 13th, days in between. Wow. Who wrote this fucking brief, man? Concern, I bet Ann Taylor was like, damn it, man. I need them on my team. They're better than Friday Filer. If you know, you know. Concern was expressed about Kohberger's behavior around women, including that he was aggressive towards women and made them feel uncomfortable. The WSU faculty discussed if or how they could intervene. One professor warned her colleagues at the meeting that Kohberger was a predator. How much more do you need when you got a professor, not just the students, still learning and honing their craft to one day become criminologists and profile these bad people? This professor should already be there. And there she is. Again, we read that earlier. What more did you need? What was that earlier? They said they was going to wait and see if they got more. He's a predator, according to the colleague professor. He is smart enough that in 4 years we will have to give him a PhD. Mark my word, I'll work with predators. If we give him a PhD, that's the guy in that many years when he's a professor, we will hear harassing, stalking, and sexually abusing his students. We read that earlier. So again, that's some pretty hardcore thinking about a guy you're just, I don't know what they're doing. The WSU professor also believed that Kohberger was already stalking people. That's not the first time we read that either, and not the only one to say it. I just don't know how much more they damn well needed to take it seriously. Kohberger's supervising instructor, unless, it's all unfolding so fast and all at the same time, blah, 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 it all just runs together. So that big fat lie in the PCA about the car and the WSU people. Kohberger's supervising instructor at WSU, however, was concerned that removing Kohberger from employment with WSU would open the university up to a civil lawsuit. And they talked about that earlier, and they even cited the law about that. If we fire this guy from this TA position and take away everything, funding, the apartment, all of that, if we don't do it the right way, he's going to sue us. We're already dealing with a bad lawsuit right now. Well, now you got 2. Despite numerous complaints about Kohberger's behavior from students, faculty, and staff, WSU failed to properly and adequately intervene or take steps to mitigate and prevent further threatening, dangerous, and predatory behavior by Kohberger. Now, like I said, I don't think they're responsible for what he did, and they couldn't have stopped what he did, but my God, if we're looking for Jen Soto red fucking flags and we want everybody to see them, I'm not going to pretend they didn't exist with this dude. They existed before he got there, but whatever. They really exploded once he got there. Like he was just dropping. He must have had a trunk full of red flags. They fly out the car when he's driving down the road. Fuck. WSU had actual knowledge of significant, problematic, and dangerous behavior that should have caused WSU to perform a formal and comprehensive threat assessment on Kohberger. And according to their little the WAVR 21 protocol, yeah. For example, WSU did provide safety escorts to concerned staff and students, evidencing its awareness of the significant danger that Kohberger posed to the Pullman-Moscow community. There is no indication, however, that WSU used its TAT to conduct a threat assessment. Now, we read about what that is yesterday. Kohberger, or that it employed any of the potential interventions recommended by its WAVR-21 protocols. Had WSU's TAT conducted a proper and comprehensive threat assessment, it would have readily identified that Kohberger prominently displayed nearly every red flag that the WAVR 21 warns about. Remember, that's the document that the colleges are supposed to go by. For instance, a proper threat assessment would have found, among other things, that Kohberger had characteristics associated with a heightened risk of violence, including anger problems, lack of empathy, and a strong sense of entitlement. Yeah, they were firing him. What the firing date and those old, I have to go back and pull the dates in the documents. That's what I'm saying, Dolphin. It was all happening around the same time, right? Kind of like when they were discovering the car over there in the IGG. All these things are happening around the same time. But we haven't seen documentation of the actual time. So I'm bet there's just some stuff there that I wonder about. Well, wouldn't you have to document things like lawsuit out of your mind? But wouldn't they have to document it if students and coworkers or other people were making formal complaints? So therefore, that's the documentation, right? You know what I mean? So I understand they need to make the documentation. I get all that. I'm just basing it on what all I've read so far in what feels like to a lot of us their inaction to really take a serious look at this guy. And they literally, at the same time that he was there, when he got there and the stuff began to unfold with him, they were knee deep in a wrongful death lawsuit, and they still are. And so, yeah, they had a lot of lawsuit on the mind. That's a given. They got a whole legal ass department looking out for them. That's why they were afraid to let him go too. Is he going to sue us if we do? For instance, a proper like I said, they didn't do the proper assessment according to the document of the WAVR 21. A proper threat assessment also would have shown other recognized serious warning signs for violence, including but not limited to that Kohberger was engaging in stalking, menacing behavior that was escalating. And remember, we talked about it yesterday, the difference in the law on stalking, quote unquote, in Idaho versus Washington. This ain't no lawyer lore and bullshit. Every state is freaking different. This is a legal document, not Steve Gonzalez coming out saying something. They're allowed to say things in this document in Washington they cannot say in Idaho. So keep that in mind when you're reading it or we're listening to it, right? Welcome in, Jet. Hey, Hawkeyes, come on in. I wonder who their lawyers are on their legal department. I'm gonna have to look at that. I'd be like so interested. Like I want to be in the courtroom when this happens. A proper threat assessment also would have shown other recognized serious warning signs of violence, including but not limited to the stalking, the menacing behavior, escalating and instilling extreme fear. And they've also spoke in the document as if they've got his cell phone records. And I went out on a limb and I want to say they probably came from Heather Bernhardt. She gave them to Olivia Gonzalez. Don't think she didn't give them to Daddy to give to these attorneys, because the way they talk in the first 68, they know what Kohberger was doing on that phone of what we can see on the Celebrite stuff, right? They didn't say that was where they got it from, but they're alluding to the fact that they know stuff. Okay. Extreme fear in the female victims, that he was having increasing conflict with professors and colleagues, that he was having increasing problems with his work performance, that he was autistic and sexually frustrated. The school couldn't have known about the autism unless he was upfront about that, but I don't, according to Anne, I'm not even sure when he was diagnosed. I don't know. I feel like that came after the crimes, according to her. So what are we doing with it? Well, actually, like I said, Anne opened up that can of worms. So they're like, okay. There was a couple of things in here in that I think 2 that I was like, wait, what? I just don't go along with everything. That he was preoccupied with violent homicidal fantasies, sexual burglary, and serial killers. Remember, they said he had that real extreme interest in the burglaries that were sexual in nature. That he was in possession of a K-bar military style hunting knife that he was using WSU's ResNet internet network for improper purposes, such as troubling searches and stalking and planning the attack. Remember when I was like, oh goodness, were our forensic data wiping tools coming from the WSU department? There's apps for that, girl. I'm like, but no. The Celebrite couple had a hard time finding that shit. That wasn't no random app I can download stuff. This was forensic data wiping tools. And we saw how they went all in on how all of the free access he had to the ResNet, which linked him into WSU. Dude, what you doing over there on them WSU computers? I knew it all along. Troubling searches and stalking and planning his attack and murders of the decedents. And that he had photos of WSU and University of Idaho female undergraduate students on his cell phone. Or were they on his browser history? Had WSU performed a proper threat assessment, it would have determined that Kohberger posed an extremely high and imminent risk of violence. Hey, Sarah. Welcome in, Miss Ma'am. We got the document. In case you haven't noticed, that's what we're reading is that complaint for the lawsuit. And thank you for linking me to that article. Hey, DB, welcome in. All right. A proper threat assessment would have required that WSU identify likely targets of any possible violence that Kohberger might commit, including by examination of his cell phone, computers, internet search history, and inspection and search of his university supply department office. A proper threat assessment also would have required that WSU identify potential triggering events that could cause Kohberger to commit violence. A proper threat assessment also would have required that WSU identify steps that could be taken to manage and mitigate Kohberger's risk for violence. There is no indication that WSU's CCR office conducted a proper, comprehensive, or timely investigation into the more than a dozen formal complaints of Kohberger. Now remember, that's the office that was handling the big lawsuit at the same time, and they were like shifting things, so Kohberger was a little unimportant. There is no indication that WSU did any of these things. Instead, for months it continued in a state of organizational and bureaucratic paralysis while continuing to employ Kohberger as a teaching assistant, continuing to provide Kohberger with housing, health benefits, free tuition, free internet access, continuing to pay Kohberger a salary, and provide him with academic studies focused on criminal behavior that fed his preoccupation and obsessed with sexual assault and mass murder. Was he like BTK and he didn't actually SA the victims, but still got gratification from what he did? I'm just analyzing Kohberger in my head because they got him wrong. They got this guy. They don't got him honed in yet. They don't know. He's different. He's a hybrid. Kohberger commits mass murder, which was foreseeable to WSU. On the weekend immediately following the November 8th discrimination and harassment training, Kohberger commits mass murder, which was foreseeable. Now, that might be a hard sell, right, to the... Think about the jury, right? The court, the judge and the opposing attorney sides. But negligence maybe by allowing him to continue all these things, but were they able to foresee he would do that? That's a little bit of a stretch. But if you go by their own standards, what happened on the 8th could have triggered why it took place on the 13th, right? There's a correlation there, whatever correlation. Now we need a psychologist on the stand. Fuck the experts, get the psychologist, the forensic person. Now we need the psychologist. Just don't send Walla or Dr. John. Fuck no. Hell, I'll just go testify for them. We don't need those other professionals. They're weird. In the early morning hours of November 13th, while he was still employed by and enrolled at WSU, Kohberger stared through the back window of a home at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, immediately adjacent to the University of Idaho. Megan Connor, this is what empathy feels like, because I have a hard time looking at that house sometimes. Like, I need to stop and take a moment sometimes. Kohberger, masked and dressed all in black, entered the King Road residence by slipping through a kitchen sliding glass door at the back of the home. And you sure can see the whole ass back of that home from Walenta Drive in the winter. Beautifully. Oh, Hawkeyes, thank you, Miss Ma'am. Don't know this case, but love this community. Thank you, Hawkeyes. You don't know the Idaho. Man, she would have been the perfect juror, right? Wow, she could be our 13th juror. Thank you, Hawkeyes. We appreciate your support around here. It means a lot. Gritty thinks he wanted to be like his idol, Bundy. I don't know that that was his idol. He pulled from everybody. And if anybody feels like Kohberger's innocent, that's fine. There are channels for that. I'm inclined to believe him because unlike Rick Allen, he wasn't drugged for forever. And he made a formal confession in a court of law, nice, neat, and clean, and totally fucking coherent. So he did it. So we're talking about it like he's the guy because he said he was. Yeah, that was a bold claim, Dolphin. I have to agree with that one. But I don't know. The one thing he did admire about Bundy so much that he really needed that one thing Bundy had that he didn't, right? That charm, that charisma. Bundy could roll up in the VW Beetle and say, hey, you want to ride? Sure. Good looking guy. Kohberger rides up. You need a ride? Oh, fuck you, creepy dude. Get out of here. Different time in the 70s for, Bundy, but he still could charm the ladies. Hell, he got married in the courtroom. He's like, I'm Ted Bundy. Watch me roll. But then you look at Rawling, and Kohberger absolutely adopted things from Danny Rawling as well. I think he was studying Bundy to try to figure out how to be more like him in that sense. But the similarities of the college girls, right? But Rawling was the same thing. Go down to Gainesville and you're going to see the mural of those victims painted not far from Shands Hospital, and it's beautiful. Kaylee Gonzalez was heard to frantically yell in fear, someone's here. Should I say it as if I'm in fear to test how that one might sound? Words are powerful. Fear. She yelled in fear. Kohberger was heard to say, it's okay, Kaylee, I'm here for you. What? It's okay, I'm here to help you. Okay, we could have done without that shit. What in the world? Dolphin. Right. No, Dolphin's like, oh, hell, number 319. We were both, yeah. What is that? All four families agreed that, because they're all in the lawsuit. Did they all proofread that? Is Dylan doubling down now that it's okay, Kaylee, I'm here for you? We can't trust that girl. We don't know what she's seeing and hearing and who the hell it is. It's figments of her imagination in 1 minute, lucid one, not the next, firemen and all, and vacuum cleaners. We can't. Using a military-style K-bar knife, Koberger then violently stabbed to death 4 victims that were later identified by police as Kaylee Gonzalez, Madison Mogen, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin. Below is a photograph of the victims taken only a matter of hours, and it was. The victims were all undergraduate students at the University of Idaho. I bet Xana was so much freaking fun. And I bet Maddie was really funny. And I bet I would have probably sat and listened to Ethan sing a lot. I've been like, yes, get Xana her vape, get me a drink, Maddie, and dude, you get up and sing. Police found defensive wounds on both Xana Kernodle and Madison Mogen's hands. Huh. Sarah, you see, Sarah's like, I'm going with that's a lie. Yeah. More the Dylan mess. Lord, we just can't with that one. Thompson knew that was a mess on his hands. 2 other female residents of the King Road residence survived the encounter. Oh, God. A surviving 19-year-old resident of the King Road residence reported to police that before the murders, Kaylee Gonzalez had seen a shadowy figure watching her from the tree line at the back of the residence, which freaked her out. Which would kind of fit our assailant's MO if we go back to the friend's house tree watching candy wrappers on the ground. Gonzalez had also told her family and roommates about a stalker in Moscow that followed her to her car. Now, I thought that had all been clarified that was, not Koberger, right? So what is that there for? Is that a secret incident we don't know about? The 19-year-old resident of the King Road resident also reported to police that she and another roommate were often freaked out at the home because they felt there was someone watching them from outside the back window. She and another roommate. You mean you and Scaredy Cat's sister? The 2 surviving roommates are the 2 that are scared constantly. The 2 girls in the horror movie that gets us all killed because they're freaking the fuck out. I heard a noise. It was a pot that shifted in the sink. It's cool, chick. And that was the night you decided, I can't get past that either. That was the night she decided, I don't want to be the girl who cried wolf anymore tonight. So I'm not going to call and tell people. But every other night, I'm going to call and tell somebody. I heard a noise. And I'm freaked out. During the time of the murders, the 19-year-old resident heard Gonzalez crying and Koberger telling Gonzalez that he was there for her. What the hell? God. All right, we already know that somebody in this group does not care for that 19-year-old girl. They never, ever had, and it's never been a secret. They just tried to be real polite about it publicly, but they never cared for that individual. Here we are with her bizarre stories. On November 13, 2022, in the days following, both WSU and the University of Idaho sent alerts to the student and staff about the murders and potential ongoing risk. After the quadruple murders, but before Koberger was identified as a suspect, Koberger's supervising instructor at WSU considered the possibility that Koberger had committed the murders. How do y'all know that? Was that reported to this team once they began going and interviewing the people, or was that is that documented on WSU's documentation? Because if that's the case, nobody called Moscow again? No? He considered the possibility that Kohberger had committed the murders. Even if he didn't report it to WSU, he didn't himself call the tip line. I'd be a little mad at that guy. Similarly, fellow WSU graduate students also immediately thought Kohberger committed the murders. What in the world? Yeah, Snyder was the one who did the interview. We talked about that a little bit yesterday, where he did the interview in the bar with the bartender. He's got the bartender. His wife's a bartender, right? That works with that guy or down there or whatever. But yeah, they're in the bar and he's shooting the shit with the bartender, and he tells the guy about Kohberger and stuff. So people are thinking he did it. Kohberger's office mate and fellow teaching assistant employed by WSU observed a large scratch on Kohberger's face, which looked like scratches from fingernails. Do we see that in documentation anywhere in the police reports? Did they not talk to this WSU employee assistant, the other teaching assistant? You know damn well they spoke to that other teaching assistant. It's going to be in the Oh, lordy. So there was a scratch on his face that looked like it could be from fingernails. Other members of the WSU criminology program also observed wounds on Kohberger's hands following the murders. None of the members of the WSU criminology program, however, notified law enforcement about Kohberger's behaviors or their suspicions about his potential involvement in the murders. Well. We have a whole ass criminology department with red flags flying everywhere, and they're saying, oh my God, he could be the guy, and they decide to do nothing? See something, say something? Lord, we're in trouble. Fuck. Mental health doctors, drug rehabs, and this shit. Messed up criminology departments that don't know what the fuck to do with one of their own. Video evidence led the Moscow, Idaho Police Department to believe that a white Hyundai Elantra may have been involved in the murders. Lord. Yeah, nothing ever happens in Moscow but good shopping. Right off and good shopping. On November 25th, 2022, the Moscow Police Department asked the Pullman, Moscow area law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for a white Hyundai Elantra. But that's all we know. In response to this request, on November 29th of 2022, WSU police officer Daniel Tango searched the WSU database for white Elantras registered with WSU and identified a 2015 white Elantra with a Pennsylvania license plate registered to Kohberger, residing at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, Apartment 201, Pullman, Washington. No apparent action was taken by WSU at this time. Well, go read the PCA. They're like, no, this cop found this car. And damn, when we pulled those driver's license, he had bushy eyebrows. Then the chief come out and said, well, yeah, we saw the car, but hell, it wasn't the right year. Why is it in the PCA? Oh, because we couldn't say we had IGG. That's why. People don't like that backdoor shit. 1630 Northeast Valley Road is an apartment complex that houses WSU graduate students and is referred to as Steptoe Village. Steptoe. It should be called Tiptoe. WSU owns and operates Steptoe Village and had provided Kohberger with a residence there as part of his employment with the university. On that same day, November 29th, at approximately 1 a.m., WSU police officer Curtis Whitman was searching for any white Hyundai Elantras and located a 2015 white Elantra in the parking lot of 1630. So you got two different cops over there have now found this car. The car had a Washington license plate, but it is also registered. But it was also registered to Kohberger. No apparent action was taken by WSU at this time. And they confirmed in an interview none was taken. The 2022 fall term then ended in mid-December, and Kohberger promptly returned back to his family in Pennsylvania. Our school's 8 miles away, and we got a 2015 white Elantra, but them boys 8 miles away, they're looking for a... They stop at 2014, I think. So we're good. They got an expert over there telling us. Only after the murders and after the semester had concluded did WSU make the belated decision to terminate Kohberger's teaching assistantship, cut Kohberger's funding, and remove him from the graduate program. As part of his ongoing investigation into Kohberger, the Moscow Police Department obtained Kohberger's cell phone records in an effort to determine if Kohberger stalked any of the murder victims prior to the killings or conducted surveillance on the King Road residence. A subsequent examination of Kohberger's cell phone confirmed that he was stalking female students at both WSU and the, oh boy, the internet's going to burn the fuck all the way down. Is anybody else covering this document? Are we still trying to figure out why Xana ordered DoorDash at 2 o'clock in the morning? Got it 2 hours later. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it yet. I haven't given it any energy. A subsequent examination of Kohberger's cell phone confirmed that I gave it a tiny bit, and that was it. I won't lie, because I can't lie. My throat chakra is wide the fuck open. With dozens of students, many in bathing suits. Okay, so that's what Dateline would have alluded to, right? A subsequent examination of Kohberger's cell phone confirmed that he was stalking female students at both WSU and the University of Idaho, with dozens of photos of the students, many in bathing suits. And see, some of the girls would recognize themselves on those images when they watched those shows, and they had to call the cops. They're like, that's me. Yeah, Sarah, they just admit, well, they're saying that they were all talking, that they were suspecting he could be the guy, but nobody did anything. And we're just going to be cool with that? I can't be. I'm not cool with two cops finding this car and saying, well, the year's 1 year off, so we don't need to look at it. You know, what? All the complaints. Come on. And they're suspecting he could be the guy, and still no tip is called in. And they're upset that WSU's not going to take them seriously enough to act, but they're failing to act at the same time by not calling a tip in. Crazy. Kohberger's cell phone records also revealed that he had been in the area of the King Road residence on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13th. But all but one of these occasions occurred in the middle of the night. Well, that's right out of the damn PCA. On one occasion, Kohberger was in the area of the residence on August 21st at approximately 10:30 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. On December 30th, Kohberger was arrested for burglary and 4 counts of murder at his family's residence in Pennsylvania. Also on December 30th, WSU issued a press release regarding Kohberger's arrest in connection with the quadruple murders. And they've attached all of their exhibits, right, that we've seen. So there was an image of that. In the press release, WSU chancellor and provost stated that this horrific act has shaken everyone in the Palouse region. She further that they also want to extend our deepest sympathies to the families, friends, and University of Idaho Vandal colleagues who were impacted by these murders. We will long feel the loss of these young people in the Moscow Pullman community and hope the announcement today will take a step toward healing. Now remember, they keep pointing out the Moscow Pullman community because in the beginning of the suit, you invited him to the Moscow Pullman dual community, right? They intertwine. We can even take courses at one another's colleges. We unpack that first 68 pages. The press release further indicated that Kohberger had completed his first semester as a PhD student at the WSU's Criminal Justice Program earlier that month. And on December 31 of 2022, WSU served a belated trespass domination on Kohberger, signed by WS Chief Police Gary Jenkins. Remember, Jenkins was appointed out of retirement from Pullman PD when the scandal broke and all the cops at WSU retired to avoid, criminal action taken against them for their little sexcapades. Right around the same time Kohberger was coming to campus. Timeline and all. And this is a copy of it, of the trespass of domination served on Kohberger. And it's to inform him he's going to be trespassing. It's like, get out of our buildings, get out of our sidewalks, breezeways, courtyards, access roads, parking lots, other Washington State University campus property. The domination is effective immediately and will continue until pending student conduct charges have been resolved. And this is December 30th when they decide to take that type of, severe action. Yeah, because he got arrested. After being served with the domination, Kohberger signed an acknowledgement. And there's this scribble scrabble. I gotta open this Coke and put it on this glass of ice that I got sitting here. I don't know why they didn't mention the seatbelt ticket stop. Why they're so honed in on that one particular date, that they've always been about. Yeah, because that one was so close and relevant, and in our opinion, one of our type theory. Yes, I get it. Also, I heard that Floyd cannabis shop video might be lurking out there. Keep an eye out for that. If you see it, let me know. As set forth above, one of the amenities that WSU provided to Kohberger at his apartment in Steptoe was free internet access, both wired and wireless, through WSU's ResNet internet network. Forensic examination of Kohberger's devices revealed an alarming and menacing history of internet use. Kohberger had performed many internet searches regarding home invasions, burglary, co-ed killings, and serial killers. For example, Kohberger had researched a serial killer named Danny Rawling. Oh, wait. Hang on, I gotta make my thing a little... I gotta fix myself. Okay. Okay, the killer named Danny Rawling. Rawling, known as the Gainesville Ripper, murdered 5 college students and became the inspiration of the slasher film Scream. In the middle of the night, Rawling entered a college apartment through a sliding glass door, masked and dressed all in black, and stabbed his female victims to death using a K-bar knife. Chilling facts suggesting that Kohberger murdered his victims in a copycat fashion. One of his victims, Rawling, happened to be a guy that happened to be there that he didn't expect to be there. Sound familiar? Kohberger also performed internet searches about psychopaths and paranoia. Or maybe he expected them to be there, but maybe to be asleep. Kohberger searched for porn exclusively involving non-consensual sex acts using terms such as aggressive, forced, drugged, sleeping, passed out, and voyeurism. Kohberger's cell phone has also contained numerous photos of female students at both WSU and the University of Idaho, including acquaintances of some of the murdered victims. Some of their acquaintances were on the phone, but how, you know, what really caught my eye with the Dateline piece, that they have, sources with the browser history. I'm not going to say it wasn't real until they say it wasn't real. All these images they could pull up, but none of the actual victims. Always intrigued me. But acquaintances were there. Apparently, in preparation for the murders, Kohberger turned off his Wi-Fi and cleared his search history. Now, remember, Bernhardt talks about that in the interviews that she had conducted after all this. Forensic examiners believed this was an attempt to conceal his location and potential evidence that would show he was not at his WSU Steptoe apartment at the time of the murders. On his school computer, forensic examiners found that Kohberger had made extensive attempts to delete his internet usage for the period of the months before the murders. On his school computer, you don't say. The evidence was that Kohberger had been using his computer during that time period, but he made attempts to delete the specific details of his use. Forensic examiners believed he was manually cleaning up his tracks in the lead up to the murders to conceal plotting, planning, and selecting victims that he had performed on this computer online in the preceding months. On this computer. Are they still trying to pull? The Bernhardts are freaking intrigued with how he did it. It was all over. Heather's brain was going 90 to nothing. This dude did what and how? I gotta know. She has to know to make her job better. If we thought she read that Celebrite report and was like, damn, this dude was good, and I forgot about it. No. Case study incoming. How the hell did you pull it off, my guy? Because if you hadn't messed up and forgot your sheath, lost it, heat of the moment, I don't know what the hell happened, but you did. So he's cleaning up his tracks and all that on that one particular computer. WSU would have possessed details regarding Kohberger's use of the WSU ResNet internet network in the form of logs and other user data on its own servers that would have been unaffected by Kohberger's attempts to conceal and delete his browser history. There is no indication, however, that forensic examiners were given access to WSU's data, which, upon information and belief, likely still exist unless subpoenas are incoming. They've already been drafted, written, and served. You've been served. Did they delete it? All right, there's no indication. Y'all get, let me start that over and I won't interrupt. I'm processing in real time. WSU would have possessed details regarding Kohberger's use of the WSU ResNet Internet Network in the form of logs and other user data on its own servers that would have been unaffected by Kohberger's attempts to conceal and delete the history. That's interesting that it wouldn't work to that extent, right? That they would still be able to go into the servers and see this stuff. There is no indication, however, that forensic examiners were given access to the data. Did they try? Not that the examiners didn't, like the state's examiners, did they subpoena it or get warrants for it, right? Or just the computer and I don't know. Upon information and belief, likely still exists unless WSU has deleted it. Would there be a footprint of a deletion? What do you think? What you think? They should have asked for that server data a long time ago, Dolphin. I agree. You think they would be able to see if they deleted anything off of it? Give it to Heather. She'll tell them if it was done or not. Might take her a minute, but she'll figure it out. She'll crack the code. I'm the Celebrate lady, and not the salt shaker lady from Karen Reed. I'm the Celebrate lady. That other lady works for somewhere else. On May 22nd, 2023, the Latah County judge entered a plea of not guilty on all of the charges filed against Kohberger. Remember, he stood silent, and everybody's like, oh, he stood silent, blah, blah, blah. That means this. Oh, fuck. Take a look at Idaho law. Guess who else before him stood silent? Lori Vallow. Guess who stood silent after Brian Kohberger? Skylar Meade, right next to his defense attorney, Ian Taylor. And he absolutely cold-blooded men down right in front of a whole bunch of people. Wasn't even no denying that shit. But we're going to stand silent in Idaho because that's what we do. It's kind of like no contest in Florida. But that meant he didn't do anything because he stood silent. So the judge enters the plea for you when that happens. On July 2nd of 2025, weeks before his trial was scheduled to begin, Kohberger pled guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder and burglary in the November 22nd murders. Like I mentioned to you guys yesterday, I was happened to be scrolling Twitter when Brian Enton dropped that tweet about him hearing a plea deal, and I'm like, what did I miss? My eyes are deceiving me. I hit Dolphin up immediately. I'm like, girl, look at this. And we're both like, what in the world? We were ready to go to trial. We needed to see it all, right? We wanted to see it all. On July 2nd, weeks before his trial was scheduled, okay, so he pled the guilty. On July 23rd, Kohberger was sentenced to, so Gritty, when you were asking yesterday, had he been sentenced yet? We were telling you, yeah, so that's the date. I couldn't recall the exact date. It was July 23rd of 2025. Kohberger was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole. Following Kohberger's sentencing, the Moscow Police Department and the Idaho State Police began releasing portions of their investigative files. The investigative files contain numerous interviews with WSU employees, faculty, staff, and students that had interactions with Kohberger during the 2022 fall semester and described in the foregoing paragraphs. Oh, goodness. Good night. I'm going to have to open my drink now. Let's see. Me too, Dolphin. This fiasco mess, hot mess of a situation unfolding, we would rather have just went to court and seen it all, right? They could have avoided a lot of this BS if they just took it to trial and stood their ground. If the prosecutors, you know what I'm saying? If you're my guy, you're going. But I also really realized that there are 2 main witnesses, and I don't even know how main they are. They were fucking problematic as hell. Let me mute so when I open this Coke, it don't like, psh. Okay. Sarah, you think they'd be able to retrieve it? Or if it had been deleted, you would think so, that it would be recoverable. Heather said that there were some things that Kohberger used they absolutely could not recover, right? That it was forensic data wiping tools. This wasn't your run-of-the-mill bullshit. Now, you might have been able to spend a lot of money and get your hands on this type of tools, but, I mean, you know what I'm saying. It's the internet. But average randos aren't going to get access to what he was doing. Not my opinion. And I'm going by what Heather said. Because if it had been a simple, app or something anybody could use, she'd have been able to just get right through that shit. That's why she's like, forensic data wiping tools, man, I gotta get something to counteract that shit. Make my job better. Oh, two main witnesses. No, I'm talking about Molly. But that girl ain't no witness. That girl didn't see anything but a firecracker. I have no questions. No further questions from that witness. Well, maybe a couple about some text messages and such, but other than that, no, ma'am. The lady walking around looking for a house, receiving a text, "Can you find it?" 2 hours later, I'm interested in talking to her. And God forbid that other girl that saw and heard a lot of things. Those are the two people I'm talking to. That's their only two witnesses. Girl downstairs in the basement saw nothing but a firecracker. And her tall roommate running toward her for safety. Sorry, Jesus, for throwing shade. It is what it is. I'm trying to be a better person in 2026, y'all. These police interviews, along with other evidence, demonstrate that WSU had extensive knowledge of Kohberger's discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior, beginning as early as the first week of the 2022 fall semester, but repeatedly failed to take proper, necessary, and decisive action to address Kohberger's behavior and eliminate the imminent and serious threat that he posed to Pullman Moscow community and to the 4 young victims. Yeah, me too, Sarah. I want to see the paperwork. Yes, Dolphin. And that's the only two witnesses these cops ever speak of is my DoorDash driver and my surviving roommate, blonde. Well, they're both blonde. The tall one, her, and my DoorDash driver. My two witnesses. Boy, man, they're both problematic. So problematic. You can't even put that one blonde chick on the stand because we got a fireman in the house. Don't think Ann Taylor wasn't going to ask her about it. What about the fireman you saw carrying the vacuum? Was that a moment of lucidity and flash 2 seconds later you're back to reality? Problematic as all get out. I don't even know if a jury would have considered that a girl. I wouldn't have. I'd been like, oh man, I can't with that shit. Just what evidence do you have? Because that's not nothing. That's what I'd have concluded as a juror eventually. Hot Mess Express, what in the hell happened? Anyway, did she know the guy that did it? She didn't? Okay, well then she's just a hot mess. Plaintiffs seek to hold WSU liable for its own decisions and actions to remain idle in the face of known extreme and repeated instances of discrimination, sexual harassment, and stalking by Kohberger, occurring in its educational program through the entirety of the fall of 2022 fall semester, that ultimately culminated in Kohberger stalking and murdering the decedents. WSU operates an educational program that receives federal financial assistance and therefore is subject to the requirements of 20 U.S.C. Whoa, they're going to bring in the codes that they got to follow because they're receiving the federal assistance applies, right? So they have to follow the federal guidelines. They talk about, and they mentioned these earlier in the earlier in the document, based on discrimination, SA, harassment, stalking, in federally funded education programs. Liability arises when the university had substantial control over both the harasser and the context in which the harassment occurred, and that the university acted with deliberate indifference to the known acts of discrimination. And they go into the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court recognized that these conditions of control are satisfied and easily and most obviously when the offender is an employee of the university. Now, remember when they started it out with this control factor, conditions of control, and things of that nature. Now, if the U.S. Supreme Court has specific wording, and I need to look at this. I need to look at that, actually. I love to read the Supreme Court stuff. I do that a lot. But I'd like to read that stuff. Anyway, this controlled environment, right, kind of situation, because he's an offender now, they're going to label it, and an employee. Similarly, liability arises where the offender is under the university's disciplinary authority in the settling in which the harassment takes place. The Supreme Court recognized a private right of action under the title allowing individuals to seek monetary damages for intentional violations of the statute, including deliberate indifference to sexual harassment and stalking. Do you think can they prove intentional anything? Or look, we were doing protocol, right? We were going by the protocol, doing the intervention, scheduling these meetings, working a plan that didn't really have a plan, those kind of things. Ay, ay, ay. Liability arises when the university has actual knowledge of discrimination and acts of the deliberate indifference. Liability extends to third-party misconduct when the university's deliberate indifference effectively subjects individuals to discrimination or harassment, including stalking, even if that harassment takes place off the physical property. And I have to wonder if that, trip back home wasn't pre-planned for the holidays, which why wasn't it, right? Why would going home for Christmas not be planned out? But would he have went home if they didn't know what kind of car this guy had been driving? Or would he have went back thinking I'm good? Because they didn't know they didn't pretend that we didn't have that camera. We don't know what he's driving. Xana's sister's still in jeopardy because somebody's reliving a fantasy every time he puts his eyes on her. The evidence demonstrates that one or more responsible WSU officials exercised sufficient control over the context. And if I was Jeffrey Kernodle, I would be like, get out of the way, Steve. You've done your job. I'm here to take over. I'm coming in hot. Stalked, planned, and ultimately attacked the decedents to support liability under the title. And all of the families have not spoken out. Steve declined to comment with media outlets. These attorneys have stated that all of the families will not be making comments. Yeah, people generally go home at Christmas. I'm just saying. Okay, so that's why I went back and backtracked it and said, okay, so they don't have the car. So what if he went back after Christmas, right? Not arrested. I didn't forget my sheath, and they didn't capture that car on camera. But I'm back. And all you got is me some weird behavior at the campus, and y'all just let me roll with it. Ugh. Yeah, a lot of people, so Dolphin, like a lot of people just like skip Thanksgiving and go home for Christmas because like that's a lot probably. Try to pull off both. I would imagine. I didn't live away like that at college, right? I didn't. So, but I've thought about stuff like that. Like if my kids decided to leave for, what about the holidays? And when you get trapped in the airports during all, no, God, lordy, lordy. See, I think about too many things. I go with the easy way. If it's hard and complicated, no, we're good. We're just going to chill over here where it's easy. Too much effort. People to people with. The evidence further demonstrates that WSU had actual knowledge of the facts that required an appropriate and comprehensive and urgent response, and that the WSU officials' failure to escalate and properly, decisively, and urgently act upon reports of Kohberger's actions was clearly unreasonable response that demonstrated WSU's deliberate indifference. As explained further above, WSU had substantial control over Kohberger as an employee of the university. WSU had the ability to perform pre-employment vetting, including performing a comprehensive background check and requiring a sexual misconduct declaration. Now, remember they mentioned the declaration earlier, and then you go back and watch the Chief Fry's interview about how he interviewed Kohberger for that position, and he, for whatever reason, just didn't feel like he was a good fit. He actually stated that he needed the person to be able to have the other officers had to have trust of the person incoming, and he didn't know if they would have Kohberger's trust. I'm like, that's very odd for you to say based on this interview you did, right? That you picked up that your department wouldn't he was an outsider coming in kind of thing, right? But the job went to a woman. How do you think that made Kohberger feel? So, holy shit. Again with this shit. After WSU hired Kohberger, I'm so tired of saying WSU because it makes me almost accidentally say something else behind it, had control over his training, including mandatory human resources services, discrimination, sexual harassment, and the misconduct prevention training. They hired Kohberger, and they had control over his supervision, specifically assigned to the WSU faculty to serve in that capacity. Kohberger was subject to numerous WSU policies and procedures that set forth the obligations that he was expected to perform. Now, remember, it went over that with that little handbook stuff they had earlier. So they go on and go through all the reasons why they should have been able to control this guy. Through its unique employment and financial relationship with Kohberger, WSU exerted substantial control over his conduct by providing him with a salary, housing, medical benefits, tuition, and the free internet, all of which conditions on Kohberger's good behavior, which WSU could revoke. Sarah thinks they'll offer a settlement. I think they will. They probably really don't have a choice. Do you want to take chances, right? I don't know. I need to look into the one. I haven't looked at the current lawsuit in a minute to see the status of. I looked at it a while back and read some documents on it. That's how come I knew about it. Before we began reading this document. So I need to look at that. But yeah, we'll see where they are with that case, right? What's the progression of that case and where does it stand on the docket, and how will it affect this one? And will they settle? Okay. Dolphin, you answering questions in there? Good, thank you. Yeah, Dolphin knows all the deets. So if I miss something, y'all, she will have your back in there and get you. Get all my messages up. Okay. So they're going through that. Kohberger's offending behavior also occurred outside of the classroom, but in the halls and offices of the criminology department. His behavior also occurred in the course and the scope of his employment at WSU, including but not limited to preying on undergraduate students and the fellow WSU graduate students and employees. So they're just going on about what they've been telling us. This is about the campus bookstore again. Kohberger's offending behavior occurred throughout WSU campus. This is the one female he harassed at the bookstore and followed students to the cars, inciting fear and safety. We had read all of those stories earlier in the reports about it. Faculty and staff and students were also aware that Kohberger was engaging in harassing, stalking, and predatory behavior off the WSU campus, but in the Pullman, Moscow community. Kohberger's offending behavior also occurred in a context that should have triggered urgent action by WSU's threat assessment team and the WSU, and the ability to take such urgent action to mitigate the threat. And remember, this is filed in the county where Ethan Chapin's parents live, Skagit County, Washington. And the attorney firm is at, what did I say, Kansas? Yeah, Kansas City, Missouri. But there's two of their attorneys practice there in Washington. So they are the ones taking on the case for them, that firm. Wagstaff and Cartmel. That's the name of the firm. WSU policies and procedures, including those that required Kohberger to act with the highest degree of professional conduct and not to discriminate, harass, and stalk, allowed WSU to take remedial action if Kohberger engaged in violence behavior that occurred in other or on or off campus. WSU had the ability to punish Kohberger for his behavior. Family took sporadic, minor, and ineffective action to address Koberger's inappropriate behavior, including informal discussions with faculty, putting him on a brief, vague, and non-specific 4-point personal improvement plan, and mandating that all graduate students participate in the remedial discrimination and harassment training which Koberger was observed to conspicuously ignore. WSU had the ability to take action against Koberger through its Compliance and Civil Rights Title Office, but despite receiving 13 formal complaints, WSU CCR apparently took no meaningful action, and the individual responsible for action on such complaints admitted never having met or even spoken with Koberger. So, are you just reading through the complaints? Are you even bringing the people in who filed the complaints, right? Are we interviewed them people yet? Why aren't we bringing in the guy that complaints, or they didn't want to tip him off that, do we have a hot one here? We can't let him know we're getting these complaints. Let's just watch him because he could be dangerous. Oh, hell. It takes all kinds of kinds. I have to remind myself that sometimes. WSU had the ability to take action against Koberger through its threat assessment team, but no indication that such action was taken. WSU had the ability to terminate Koberger's employment, eliminating his funding. Now, see the timing of that, when they were actually firing him. We've seen the email and all that. The WSU ResNet Internet Network. They could have eliminated his access. But at that point they could have, but the damage was already had done at that point. Well, I don't know, because then this guy was working fast. From July to November, I got to find victims. I got to get this. I got to learn this computer system. You're doing a lot, sir. He was extra. Like, he was doing a lot. No wonder the guy never slept. He's just like brain going 90 to nothing. I got to do all these things. And I got to still get in my stargazing because mama taught me well. It's my relaxation. WSU ultimately did terminate Koberger's employment and eliminated his funding, but not until after he had murdered 4 young students. My mama would always say, "You're a day late and a dollar short." Only after Koberger's arrest for the murders did WSU finally serve Koberger with his trespass of domination, prohibiting his presence at WSU. Well, did they think he was going to get out on bond and come back? I get it. It's a formality. I'm not a bloomin' ass idiot, but damn, come on. He's not coming back. Hey, shoot off that formal letter. We got to cover our tracks here. We don't want to get sued for early termination of a lease for no reason. 1 second, guys. Okay. The members of WSU Criminology Department, most if not all of whom were mandatory reporters, were tracking Koberger's inappropriate behavior, but failed to properly inform and alert WSU administrators. So they were, we'd already read this, right? We knew about the Brian tally before we ever cracked open this document, but we've read about it some more. They're tracking his inappropriate behavior. Then these murders happen. They're all like having coffee or hanging out at the criminology department going, y'all know that Koberger could be the guy. Yeah, you're right. Dude's freaky as shit. But they're going to go, okay, well, I'll see y'all after class. We'll meet for lunch. End of story. Couldn't be that guy we're tracking because I saw what kind of car he drives and it's not the right one. So takes him off the table. Ultimately, however, WSU, just think about that for a freaking minute. They're all over there complaining amongst themselves. None of them ever saw what kind of car this fucker stepped out of. What is wrong with college students? Dylan, I'm throwing shade at Dylan Mortensen, a 19-year-old mindless drunk girl, and I got a group of college young criminology department professionals over here tracking this motherfucker's inappropriate behavior and talking about he could be the guy, and yet they failed to do anything. Just like the little 19-year-old girl getting ripped alive by me and everybody else on the internet. Well, fucking welcome to my world. You just entered it. A few students knew what he drove. Right, Dolphin, I'm part of me is being real sarcastic because you fucking know they knew. Somebody knew he drove a white Hyundai Elantra. Or at least a white car. That one dude even talked about being right there by his car. But he's so creepy and weird that we got to run a tally over here and 911 me in an email if you need me. Leave your office door open. Creepy guy might try something. Professors are like, I work with predators and he's a predator. And fucking Washington State University fails to report Bryan Kohberger to the Moscow Police Department. How many times? Lord, Lord, Lord. Stop it with your word salad, thinking we don't have brains out here. Ultimately, however, WSU received the 13 complaints about the harassing and stalking type behavior by Kohberger, and they went presented to WSU administrator, whose duties are to address such complaints. But there is no indication that WSU acted on those formal complaints. So they received the 13 complaints of the discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior that were presented to a WSU administrator, whose duties are to address the complaints. But there's no indication. So in the paperwork, no indication that those formal complaints or that it acted in any urgency. WSU faculty recognized the need to stage an intervention on Kohberger very early on, and months before the murders, but failed to ever do so. They have all that documentation, right, that these conversations were happening. And if they weren't documented, do they have the depositions now from this faculty, this criminology department at the university? Are they all now giving depositions to this defense or to this attorney firm here representing these families? Because they're getting their information from somewhere, and it can't be from randos off the street. That ain't good enough. So they had planned an intervention or talked about doing the intervention, but never did it. Kohberger's supervisor at WSU even advocated that disciplinary action not be taken against Kohberger out of fear he would sue WSU. Is that in documentation? Because I really would love to see it. One WSU supervisor of Kohberger's advocated that disciplinary action not be taken against Kohberger out of fear that he would sue WSU, thereby putting the financial interests of the university above the safety of the community. Did they ever release a profile of the killer? Are you talking about this case, or are y'all talking about a different one? Like a sketch, like Bridge Guy sketches? Nah. Was that what you're? I don't know. I'm confused, Dolphin. I don't know if you're talking about this case or if you're commenting to somebody else. Okay, I'll move on because I don't know. The official policy that tolerated sexual misconduct, harassment, and stalking is evidenced in part by the fact that during the 2022 fall semester, WSU's own investigation determined that WSU Police Department, a department responsible to prevent and intervene in instances such as misconduct, had itself engaged in numerous incidents of sexual misconduct and fostered an environment that discouraged reporting of misconduct. Now, remember, we read about that earlier yesterday. Oh, the profile, the BAU profile? No, just white car, bushy eyebrows. But no, Dolphin, and even I'm convinced the Cowboys were BAU. I just felt it in my gut. They were looking to see, what do we have here? What's our expert analysis? I don't know. Do y'all think those Cowboys were BAU? If you know, you know. I'll have to pull up the Cowboys one day and watch them walk. Y'all see what y'all think. Prop it over people. Yes, Jet. All right, so now remember what they're speaking of, the internal stuff that was going on with the police department. Remember, the department retired because they were under investigation for misconduct. And they're like, no, we'll retire so you can't prosecute us. Remember, like I said, the criminals don't get that option. I'm retired. You can't arrest me now. I retired yesterday. So whatever, it doesn't matter anymore. Despite being aware of specific reports of inappropriate and alarming behavior, WSU allowed Kohberger's discriminatory and harassing stalking behavior to continue unchecked. That provided him with a target-rich environment that the behavior was tolerated and allowed to escalate, including but not limited to continued interaction with female undergraduate students in a supervisory capacity at WSU, teaching as a WSU teaching assistant, a salary on campus housing with the free internet. They keep doubling down on what all y'all was giving him. Recognizing, which is common, right, for that type of position. Recognizing the potential and serious danger that Kohberger posed, WSU police provided safety escorts to female students and employees, but did not intervene directly with Kohberger or perform any proper threat assessment. Now, see, and it goes so far, you're walking these women to their cars. Y'all are all having these conversations. You got the tally going. You got this and you got that. You got a scratch. You got all what? And nobody decided to say he could be the guy. That's as baffling as why nobody in Delphi, Indiana ever called the cops and said, hey, that pharmacist down at the CVS looks just like the guy in that sketch. He even sounds like him when he asked me, is that going to be all today? Isn't that odd? I find it odd. Evidence also indicates that Kohberger engaged in stalking behavior and preparatory acts as it relates to decedents both on WSU property and using WSU resources. WSU provided on-campus housing to Kohberger at the Steptoe Village Apartments. Yeah, Dolphin, it does get repetitive throughout the whole thing in some parts of it. But hell, I'm in the home stretch. I'm the document reading queen. This is just a fucking 126-page document. I read all 800 and something pages of Stefan Stern's bullshit. I don't even know how many documents I've read over here. People get hung up on the words and the word. Get over it. I read too many for all that. The numerous red flags in Kohberger's behavior should have led to WSU to monitor his online behavior. And had WSU done so, it would more likely. The thing is that they have documentation and depositions from this handful of people that have made all these reports. That's what they need to have, instead of coming with some cute stories we've heard about. because that's not going to cut it in the court of law, and we all know it. We're not idiots. It's not going to work. Evidence indicates the Kohberger had engaged in stalking behavior of one or more of the decedents for months before he committed the murders. Now, it'd be interesting to see what WSU will come back with, right, when they get their reply to this. After the murders, a forensic examination of one of Kohberger's computers revealed that during his time at WSU, he had performed many deeply troubling internet searches about serial killers, home invasions, co-ed killings, and pornography. And that apparently continued once he got back home in Pennsylvania on his own shit. Kohberger, unless he was still accessing the schools from there. Yeah, when did they cut him off? What was the date on that little domination thingy? Kohberger, however, made significant efforts to delete. No, they didn't fire him till after he got arrested officially. Which forensic examiners believe was a deliberate attempt to conceal his plotting, planning, and stalking. Had WSU been monitoring Kohberger's use of the RestNet internet network, it would have been aware of these efforts to plot, plan, and stalk. And I've wondered that. Did they not have if you're at work on the work computer, they're going to be looking at what you're doing. Like, yeah, what are you doing? You're looking at cat videos. You're not working. How many people were getting busted because of that? I see you, heifer. Get back to work. Dolphin, yeah, he didn't care. He's like, don't look at my phone. You might be offended. Well, he must could see well. However, it made significant efforts to delete his computer activity in the month before the murders. This is cites in the month before, not months, but the month before. Remember, Heather talked about different blocks of time. Okay. Which forensic examiners believes was the deliberate attempt to conceal his plotting and planning. I want to go back and review all those interviews with the Bernhardts again, now that I've even learned more. Had WSU been monitoring Kohberger's use of the RestNet internet network, it would have been aware of the efforts. So, did they not monitor stuff and could see what they were doing? Additionally, WSU possessed information about Kohberger's use of RestNet in the form of server logs and other data that they would have remained in WSU's possession despite any efforts of Kohberger to delete or conceal. Reports indicate that Kohberger had been stalking one of the decedents on social media. Who told you that, though? That one guy? Garrett? I'm not even sure Heather had went on a limb and made that connection. But I know Garrett did, and I know how he said he did it. I watched it because I'm curious. Gave him the benefit of the doubt. Reports indicate that Kohberger had been stalking one of the decedents on social media, and to the extent that occurred through the WSU RestNet network. It is a violative. So they have proof. Because it says reports indicate. Bad YouTube channels told them that. Steve was watching. Stacy ain't watching all that, though. She's like, Steve, not that one. We're not putting that in there. That came from that one channel. Damn it, man. Okay, yeah. All right. And I know for a fact they were sent that dude's reports as well early on. It is violative conduct. It is violative conduct that occurred on the WSU campus. Kohberger also possessed the murder weapon for months before the murders. It was a violation of WSU policies and the apartment agreement for Kohberger to possess the murder weapon in his on-campus apartment. Remember, we read that in the the codes that you weren't allowed to have that, but like, how would you know they had that unless you suspected they had that, right? He wasn't whipping it out and showing it off to the crowd. So they didn't know it was in there to go in there searching. But it was illegal to have it inside your apartment. You could just take a knife. Kohberger's repeated alarming and menacing behavior should have caused WSU to inspect his apartment, as it had the right to under the agreement, which they did. We read about that. But there should be some guidelines to prompt you as to when you would go into these apartments for inspection. Is it annual inspections? Is it, quarterly inspections to make sure they're doing the upkeep, things of that nature? That usually you let the tenants know you're coming and all this, that, and the other. They're like, nope, y'all should have seen the red flags and you should have went searching. WSU's response to Kohberger's behavior and the numerous complaints raised by WSU students, faculty, and staff was clearly unreasonable. Now, remember when they went into the search warrant to do the apartment, Dolphin, didn't they have to call in and get a separate specific warrant for the storage building connected to his apartment? I had the padlock on it and shit. Under the title, liability also arises when discrimination and harassment is so severe, pervasive, and objectively offensive that it deprives victims access to educational opportunities or benefits. Well, when you got girls running and crying out of class. Uh-oh, Jones deep cleaning but listening. Thank you. Kohberger's discriminatory and harassing behavior was so extreme, pervasive, and objectively offensive. Okay. So that's when they talk about the girl who runs out of the class, fleeing in the middle of the instruction, leaving her possessions behind. Female students, staff, and faculty felt threatened and scared by his aggressive staring, looming behind them and uncomfortably close, physically blocking their exits. Okay, they repeat all this stuff from earlier. The decedents, Gonzalez, Mogan, Kernodle, and Chapin, all students at a federally funded university in the same community, were also deprived and permanently denied access to educational opportunities and benefits when Kohberger stalked them, planned his attack, violently assaulted them, and ultimately took their lives. WSU's acts and omissions alleged herein that the respect to the discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior of Kohberger against multiple female students deprived students of full benefits of their educational program on the basis of sex in violation of the title. WSU failed to exercise its supervisory power and disciplinary authority over Kohberger, despite having repeated notice. The only way, if they failed to follow protocol they had in place, right? If something's off in their documentation, if there were statements made, documented, that what we're going to do, if they followed the protocol, they really don't have anything to worry about. But if they didn't quite follow it, they may have something to worry about. Are they limited in their liability? Probably so. But they're still liable to some extent, in my opinion, because there was just too much so fast coming in about this guy. But even if they had fired him and, removed him he still was going to go do what he did. That was still going to happen. It just may have caused the date to change. The likelihood of Kohberger engaging in future and escalating misconduct was so obvious that WSU's failure to act was the result of deliberate indifference. I think the biggest failure to act came after the murders, if they all truly considered he might have been the guy. That should bother everybody in the big scheme of things, especially out of an entire department of criminology people. I can't wrap my head around that. WSU acts and omissions alleged herein with respect to the discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior of Kohberger against multiple female students. Okay, so we are down here. And they go in again about how they failed to protect everybody. Again, as his employer, they were negligent in hiring, supervising, and retaining Kohberger as an employee. They had a duty to exercise reasonable care as to control Kohberger outside the scope of his employment to prevent intentional harm from others. And they cite all of that in that guidelines they're supposed to be going by that they apparently didn't go by. They even talk about not doing it. WSU was negligent when it failed to control Kohberger as to prevent him from intentionally harming others. WSU allowed a duty of care under the Restatement Second of Torts. And they're going on about how they were negligent and everything. I'm just trying to get down to see if there's anything that they haven't covered yet. I don't think there will be because this document's almost over. Again, with their duty and the response, reasonable care to control Kohberger, protect the community, including the decedents from foreseeable harm and any imminent danger that he posed. Described above, it was definite, established, and continuing relationship between WSU and Kohberger. The relationship between WSU and Kohberger was unlike WSU's relationship with a typical individual student. WSU offered Kohberger employment as a teaching assistant for a definite period of time, the 2022 fall semester and 2023 spring semester, with defined and established expectations of performance and behavior pursuant to the written employment agreement. Affirmatively brought Kohberger to the Pullman Moscow community from the East Coast, and its offer of employment included a requirement that he reside in Washington. Again, they started it out with this, right? Y'all invited him into the community. Y'all invited him. Oh, a lot of documents are like that, Dolphin. What was it? How long was our Frank's motion in the Delphi thing? 130. Yeah, this ain't even the longest one I've ever read. But yeah, they do become repetitive. That's just the way it is with documents. So I try to sometimes just get to the other stuff when I know it's been repeated a bunch, but they take it in different chunks in return, especially in long filings. But if you don't read the whole filing, sometimes that's when you will miss shit. In return for his teaching assistant services provided to WSU, Kohberger received the okay, they're going through everything he got again. Everything y'all were giving him. That you didn't take it away. And they go back into the graduate handbook they covered earlier, and maintaining the higher standards of professional and conduct, all the things, training and all that. Kohberger engaged with his supervisors on nearly a daily basis. They had the ability to control Kohberger and, in fact, did exercise control over Kohberger. WSU also knew of the necessity and opportunity to exercise control. Control. You can't control him. WSU had the ability to use its multidisciplinary TAT to conduct a threat assessment using its WAVR 21 protocol to identify Kohberger's propensity to commit violence and to implement measures to mitigate that risk, and failed to do so. Those are the key things that I will take away out of this long document. The statements made by the individuals who interacted with him, do we have those on paper? And failure to follow your own protocols. But the meat and potatoes of it all, as they say, the nuts and bolts, the shit that matters. Everything else is word salad and stuff to distract me. So they're going about the community standards and all this. Okay, so I think that's probably how this thing is going to end. Just going into how they failed to follow their own policies and procedures. They could have prevented so they're saying when they failed to follow that one procedure, right, with the document, the what was it called, the WAVR, on that November 8th meeting, right, that they embarrassed him, they triggered him, basically, that under this document they shouldn't have done that. So that's what they keep alluding to about that part of it. And like, was that the trigger that caused what happened on the 13th? Who knows? Indeed, after the murders, WSU exercised the ultimate control over Kohberger and terminated his employment, defunded him, and served him with a trespass of domination prohibiting his presence. They knew, or should have known, that Kohberger habitually engaged in misconduct. They mismanaged the numerous complaints they received about his inappropriate behavior. Attempts to contain these complaints within the criminal justice and criminology program, avoiding escalating complaints to proper authorities, engaging in effective informal discussions. So did the complaints never leave the criminal justice and criminology department, right? It never went higher up than that? Or did y'all send it to the team, but they're busy a little bit with something else? Are firmly keeping him employed. Through his close relationship with Kohberger, they had a substantial insight into his dangerous propensities, and they were aware of the identities of various victims, primarily the young females. An undergraduate student living in the Pullman Moscow community, decedents were foreseeable targets of victims of Kohberger's. It was reasonably foreseeable to WSU that Kohberger would engage in future escalating misconduct. Had WSU's TAT conducted the proper WAVR 21 assessment and followed the recommendations and warnings of the threat assessment and intervention protocols, it would have known that Kohberger was a ticking time bomb and ready to explode, and should not have embarrassed him in front of his entire cohort when it mandated remedial sexual harassment and discrimination training for all students, but solely because of Kohberger's behavior. Do they have a transcript of said meeting? WSU was aware of Kohberger's repeated instances of inappropriate, predatory, and menacing behavior occurring within the days of him first appearing on WSU campus, and WSU breached its duty of care and was negligent in the following respects. A, hiring Kohberger and bringing him to the Pullman Moscow community without conducting an adequate background check and other employment vetting. Now, were they not aware of the arrest? Would that have mattered? He was 16. Were they not aware of the high school incident? Would it have mattered? Would they have been able to see it because it was high school? Records and all. I don't know how deep they could go. You don't remember the name? We got to go back through some of these documents, Dolphin, and try to piecemeal it together, right? The names and when this stuff took place. When did this meeting take place? And I think that's all going to be in the Washington dumps, right? That we have. I have to go back through them. Failing to adequately train and supervise Kohberger, failing to follow policy and procedure, failing to timely report Kohberger's inappropriate, menacing behavior to WSU threat assessment team, and failing to perform an adequate threat assessment of Kohberger, and failing to implement necessary, proper, and urgent measurements to mitigate the imminent threat posed by Kohberger. Failing to report Kohberger's inappropriate and predatory behavior to appropriate WSU administrators and law enforcement. F. permitting the Criminal Justice and Criminology Department to address Kohberger's behavior through informal, piecemeal, indecisive, and wholly inadequate faculty decisions, and add HOC responses instead of urgent, involving appropriate WSU administrators and law enforcement. Failing to timely report Kohberger's inappropriate, menacing behavior to WSU's Center for Community Standards, and failing to promptly and thoroughly investigate such reports taken and take urgent action against Kohberger. Well, apparently the only thing in a background check, Rach, is going to be when he stole the phone at 16 and maybe his high school incident, because there's nothing else. Where reports that he broke into houses, but they didn't call cops on him, right? They told the story. The neighbor and then the friend's dad. He stole Big Sister's phone and Daddy called the police. The same sister who tried to get him out of the house one time in an argument, he grabbed her hands and de-escalated the situation. Failing to timely report Kohberger's, and that was her words, not mine, I didn't make it up. Failing to timely report Kohberger's inappropriate and menacing behavior to WSU Center for Community Standards, and failing to promptly and thoroughly investigate such reports and take urgent action against Kohberger. Can we send him back to Mother? He needs to relax on the deck and look at the stars. Failing to timely report Kohberger's inappropriate, menacing behavior to WSU's Compliance and Civil Rights Title Office, and failing to promptly and thoroughly investigate or investigate such reports. All right, we know. So we're getting on through, yeah. Then they go back into the agreement being broken on the rental of the apartment because he had the knife. But again, how did they know? He didn't order it while he lived there. It didn't arrive while he lived there. He literally got it before he ever went there. So they would never have known it was in there. So, you got to call bullshit where you see it. That's not going to be a sticking point in court, and they know it. They just had to throw it in there. Mismanaging the numerous complaints and reports of Kohberger's inappropriate behavior. Failing to intervene in Kohberger's discriminatory, harassing, and stalking behavior, and failure to discipline Kohberger. Failing to terminate, failure to remove from campus. Reasonable care. Gross negligence. Plaintiffs incorporate by reference each and every allegation stated above, and as if stated herein and in full. WSU had a duty to exercise slight care, which is care substantially less than ordinary, and to refrain from grossly negligent acts and omissions. WSU's multiple failures and breaches of its duties owed, as described above, approximately caused the assault and murder of decedents. That's a hard sell. WSU's multiple failures and breaches of its duties owed, as described above, approximately caused the assault and murder of the decedents and resultant damages for which WSU is liable. I'm not ready to take responsibility off Kohberger's hands and lie it solely on WSU. I'm saying they made some missteps, obviously missed a bunch of red flags, but they didn't cause it. Plaintiffs incorporate. He planned it before he got there, for fuck's sake. Apparently. Well, maybe he didn't. Maybe he dreamed it once he bought his little knife and saw what Danny did with his. He's like, well, damn, that looks fun. Plaintiffs incorporate by reference each and every allegation stated as above and here in full. Okay. Intolerable in a civilized community. Atrocious and utterly intolerable is their conduct. WSU did in fact cause severe emotional distress on the plaintiffs, decedents, and the families. Survival claim. It's a photo of Kaylee. The wrongful acts and neglect of WSU, as alleged above, caused or contributed to the injuries inflicted on Kaylee Gonzalez. Prior to her death, Kaylee Gonzalez experienced extreme pain and suffering, anxiety, emotional distress, and humiliation as Kohberger repeatedly and violently stabbed her to death. At the time of her death, Kaylee Gonzalez had no surviving spouse, domestic partner, or living children or stepchildren. Kaylee Gonzalez does have surviving parents and siblings. Steve Gonzalez, a personal representative of the estate of Kaylee Jade Gonzalez, assessed a survival claim under RCW, and they give the codes, for the pain and suffering, anxiety, emotional distress, and humiliation sustained as a result of Kaylee's injuries. Plaintiff Gonzalez seeks damages in such amounts as determined by a tier of fact to be just under all the circumstances of the case. Wrongful death claim. The wrongful acts and neglect of WSU, as alleged above, caused or contributed to the death of Kaylee Gonzalez. 1 second, guys. I had to get a drink. Okay. Economic and non-economic damages sustained by the beneficiaries as a result of Kaylee's death, including but not limited to the loss of the decedent's love, guidance, companionship, and society services, care and attention, protection, and advice. And they worded it like that because they can't come and say, well, she had no children or surviving spouse, right? No, but she had a mama and daddy and a whole bunch of siblings. Plaintiff Gonzalez seeks damages in such amounts as determined by a tier of fact to be just under the circumstances of the case. And then we have this. Maddie looking just like her mama. The wrongful acts and neglect of WSU, as alleged above, caused or contributed to the injuries inflicted on Madison Mogen. Prior to her death, Madison Mogen experienced extreme pain, suffering, anxiety, emotional distress, and humiliation as Kohberger repeatedly stabbed her to death. They had the same wording. She had no domestic partner, children, or stepchildren. And she has the surviving parents. Of course, Karen Laramie is representing the estate of Maddie. And they go into the wrongful death claim, the same exact wording. And then we have Xana's. The wrongful acts and neglect of WSU, as alleged above, caused or contributed to the injuries inflicted on Xana Kernodle. Prior to her death, Xana experienced extreme pain, suffering, anxiety, emotional distress, and humiliation as Kohberger repeatedly and violently stabbed her to death. And again, with the same no children, stepchildren, spouses. Jeffrey Kernodle is representing the estate of Xana Kernodle. And then it goes into the wrongful death part of it. There. And then we have Ethan's. And so Stacy Chapin did join the suit. All four families are involved. The wrongful acts and neglect of the WSU, so same exact wording, contributed to the injuries inflicted on Ethan. Extreme pain, suffering, anxiety, emotional distress, and humiliation as Kohberger repeatedly stabbed him. At the time of his death, he also had no surviving spouse, partners, or children. We all know he was a triplet. And if you didn't, you do know now. Sorry if you don't know much about the case. Plaintiff Chapin seeks the damages. Okay, so same. And then again with the wrongful death part of it as well. And Stacy's representing Ethan's estate. And then the prayer for relief. Now that's standard language in some of these documents for some of these, whatever. They say it in the Idaho ones a lot. We pray the court fine. I'm like, are we asking the judge, or are we asking Jesus? Separation of church and state. Anyway, plaintiffs pray for judgment against defendant WSU as follows: for all special and general damages established at trial, for compensatory damages in the amount to be proved at trial. So they haven't even put a monetary figure on this, right, that I've seen, and I don't think this document even listed. There's like one more page left, right? So they're going to be determined that at trial. For plaintiffs' reasonable attorney fees and all that, okay. Punitive damages under the law, pre-judgment interest allowed by the law, post-judgment awards to the plaintiffs. God, this could be a multi-millions, right? Even if they settled. Demand for jury trial. Plaintiffs hereby demand a jury trial on all matters so triable. Y'all think they would play ball if WSU walked in and said, we'll make a deal? Or would they stand on their ground and do it as a change your policy and keep our kids safe, take your money and shove it up because that money ain't gonna bring them kids back. It's the principle behind it. It's you failed. All of y'all failed, you failed, right? So I get there. I get it. I get why they all four joined in as what also, if they've seen, so these attorneys have probably had meetings with all of these parents, had discussions about what they do have, what documentation they have, and kind of laid it out for them a little, and to get them on board. I don't picture Stacey Chapin as running balls to the walls to jump on anything without doing her due diligence first. And like I said, the attorney has said that none of the family members will be having comments. I was like, when I read that article and they said we asked Steve Gonsalves for comment, he declined. I was like, for the first time? Steve's finally took a seat. You might need to for a moment. Let this play out. Yeah, I don't think that, Dolphin, you don't think they'd want to take a deal. Yeah, they want to go to court. They're sick of it. It's like, get us to court so we can see all the stuff. Y'all are going to put it all out there willy-nilly, piece by piece, and cause us anxiety every damn day. But y'all weren't willing to go to trial and unpack it all. But yeah. And if we had went to trial, we'd get the goods on Kohberger. We'd get the police interviews. We'd get the arrest information. But no, we don't get any of it. So if they want to make me a conspiracy theorist, keep it up. I don't understand why you got to protect this dude like that. What rights? He's in prison. Protect him from the vent people. His documentation doesn't need protecting anymore, especially under the criminal justice system as I know it, transparency and all. Come on, people. We can't even get the arrest video. I'm still watching brand new, fresh roommate or friends interviews that all say the same thing. Heard nothing, saw nothing. They were my friends. Okay, can I see the one where Kohberger got arrested? Because I really want to see that one. And they're like, no, you can't. Stupid. You think they're better than Steve's former attorney? Steve's former attorney was Kay and Larry Woodcock's attorney in the Lori Vallow case. And he was their attorney long before he became anywhere involved with the Gonsalves, and he practices there in Idaho. That's why he was their attorney, Kay and Larry. What he did do for Kay and Larry was represent the family. And Kay and Larry needed to testify, which meant Kay and Larry couldn't sit during the trial and hear testimony. But Shannon got in there and worked a deal to get them in there and let them testify so they can sit through their grandchildren's murder trial. So he was just there to represent the family on matters of that nature. That was pretty much it. That was it, and I think people kind of, it got to extremes because him and Steve kept talking. I think he was just trying to calm Steve down, but nothing works with that. You know what I mean? It is what it is. All he could do is go in there and fight the law on that part of the gag and all that shit. That's his forte. He ain't no criminal defense attorney or nothing like that. That's why he came on board with the Gonzalez to help with the way he did with Kay and Larry. It was the whole reason he came on board, and it kind of got sidetracked with all the gag order shit. Yeah, Dolphin. Yeah, buddy. All right, guys. Well, that was a long document. We finally finished it. We're going to keep an eye on the docket for these upcoming things. We have the 21st, Ashley Buzzard, Lord Lady with the wig. Stacey Wandra is back in court in March with a status conference and then the preliminary hearing that's scheduled to last 3 days. And maybe we'll, hopefully we'll get that televised. I took a peek at old weirdo Barry Morphews, and there's nothing happening there but a bunch of "don't look at us, don't look at Barry." So I don't care. Justice for Susan Morphew, but that dude's a creep, and I'm done with him. I feel like there's a lot of protecting that guy going on too, and I don't get why. It's like I saw just the other day someone talking in the attorneys and stuff about these gag orders and how quickly they're being handed down in these cases now because of social media and such. Because we're going to sit here and debate everything, all of the things. Yeah, we will, but they're doubling down on keeping this stuff quiet. Yeah, Dolphin, they were planning to get rid of him, it sounds like, on paper, but they was taking their little sweet time, apparently. And why would some of these students say, well, I'm not comfortable going to that department to complain about Kohberger? That department literally was under investigation for sexual misconduct on campus when Kohberger began to get reports on Kohberger. They were a whole preoccupied thing going on. It's a lot. That's why I want to see the documentation myself, this timing, right? Because it feels like they were getting all these reports in, 13 formal complaints. They were holding these meetings. They were coming up with plans to improve your behavior. All these things are happening the same time. The FBI's over there were running some IGG bullshit in the background. It's a lot of things going on at the same time. And Kohberger don't know which way to turn. They're all watching me. Imagine it. My sheath, I can't find it nowhere. Do I go back in? All the things. These people at school don't like me. They're fixing to fire me. I got to go home and tell mama they're firing me. Oh, man. Dude's world was caving in around him, right? And think about Dad all the way back to Pennsylvania with that ball of anxiety driving. I'd have been like, son, let me out. I'll get on the Greyhound bus. I'll get on one of them airplanes. Put me on an airplane, man, because I can't ride with you. Drop me off here in Colorado. I'd have took my chances on the airplane from Colorado. But get me a hotel. I got to rest. That was a lot, son. Wow. Yeah, he had been mailed. Yeah, all that's out there, that he had been mailed the letter about getting fired and all that. Blooms. I need to see it. I want to see the dates on all this stuff. This document says a whole lot, all 126 pages of it, right? I mean, it goes pretty in depth. So I'm saying you can't walk into court with this and say this rumor stuff, right? She said hearsay and allowed. So I'm assuming they got depositions from all these people that all this was going on, and it all has to have a date attached to it. So I want to see how it was all unfolding in real time before their eyes. And were there really discussions about, well, maybe we should just wait and see if we get more? How long are we going to wait? right? That kind of thing. But yeah, they knew they had to get rid of him. But I think maybe the problem was, how do we get rid of him legally so he can't sue us, right? Because you can't just go in and fire, were they taking a look at this documentation to see if it was enough to fire him without him retaliating and suing them, for it? All the documentation, actually, I always said the rumors you could see when you see the documentation, you see where the rumors were born from. But I understand it. I mean, we read a lot of documents, we see a lot of statements, we know that all attorneys come in with their shit, right? That document said a lot, and I hope they have some documentation to back up what they've said. Otherwise, they're in trouble. That's hearsay. And I got a problem if y'all all decided, damn, that Kohberger creepy guy could be the guy that did that in Moscow, and y'all sat on that. Everything else aside, I don't care if they fired him 5 days ahead, 2 days after he got there. If one person thought he could have been the guy, legitimately thought that, and failed to act, sit all the way down with that shit. It's an anonymous tip. You ain't even got to give your name. They're fucking criminology students. They know how it works. I don't know. Do you think any of these things alleged in this document are rumor, Dolphin? Like the statements from the people who were complaining is what I'm talking about. That part, But we heard a lot of rumors of what they supposedly were saying about him over there in WSU, but we haven't seen it with our own eyes. So maybe as this case unfolds with the civil suit here, or the lawsuit against WSU, documents will, I don't know if they'll seal it, right? They haven't said. So we'll have to see if they seal this shit. It's Washington, so do they seal stuff like that? You know what I mean? They probably will. Oh, you was talking about, girl, the Hot Mess Express girl. Lord, yeah. But I can't even take her seriously about anything. All right, guys, I'm going to let y'all go for the day. We'll keep an eye on the things we're keeping an eye on. I don't know if there's any Tepe murder updates since we've been live. I haven't looked. I haven't checked while we're live. Have y'all seen anything out there? Yeah, they sealed Kopacka. People are still trying to dig up all the Kopacka stuff. All right. Did he know Kohberger too? I'm seeing all the things, but yeah, I can't believe I'm still seeing some of it after all this time. It's come back to haunt us. But it's like I saw somebody review the article the sister did, and they had commentary on every little single section, except the part about the fight in the kitchen with the brother. Read it, glossed right over it, and didn't have one comment about that part. And I was like, well, that's interesting. That part didn't matter, huh? Fight with sister in the kitchen, grabbing hands and de-escalating situations. Not a big deal. Let's move on. When they did, real quick, like, all right. Damn it, man. Poor Kopacka. Rest in peace, sir. I know you had a troubled mind. Anyway, y'all be safe on them YouTube streets. Apparently, it's still incredibly dangerous out there. Heed the warning signs. That's all I know to tell y'all. Take everything with a big ol' ass grain of salt, including me. All right, guys, y'all go have a good one, and I'll see you when I see you. Thank you for coming in. I appreciate each and every one of you.
Thank you.